Hey everybody, it's Mac here, and today we're going to go over something that pretty much every server that's not just a group of friends needs, and that's permissions. Permissions plugins allow you to creatively control the group of people that are on your server and basically give them ranks, and it allows them to do certain commands and to not do certain commands, even up to the point where if you're running essentials, you can stop somebody from building or placing blocks or anything at all with permissions. So it's extremely handy. And if you're trying to run a server that's not just your friends, it's pretty much mandatory because you don't want people to just have op and not have op. They'll mess up your server pretty bad. So I would say the the main thing. Well, actually, let me go over something real quick. This is a developer note, but if you're trying to develop, all of the permissions plugins now run off of something called bPermissions, which is Bucket's permission API. Basically, that's required now. If you're trying to run a permissions plugin that's not using bPermissions, then Bucket's pretty much just not going to use it. So if for whatever reason you're developing and you're watching this video for some reason, then just make sure that you're using the latest API and not some crazy old version. Alright, so on to permissions. There's three major permissions that everybody's using right now. PEX, Essentials Group Manager, and bPermissions. PEX, a lot of people use. It's probably just as big, if not bigger, than bPermissions. I've used it. It's a great, it's actually like a little group of plugins. It's a great system. It's just extremely hard to set up. If you're new to hosting, I wouldn't recommend even bothering to look at PEX unless you kind of know what you're already doing. Next is Essentials Group Manager. I can't really say whether or not I like it because I haven't really gotten into it. However, it's not really updated a lot. They take a while to update their stuff, and I don't know, that's just a turn off for me. And then the last is what we're actually going to go over today, and that's bPermissions. bPermissions is a plugin set by Codename B, and it's probably by far the easiest to set up if you're new to permissions or Minecraft hosting. To the point where he even made another plugin where everything's drag and drop on a user interface. We're not going to do that. We're just going to do it the manual way because I like that extra level of control, and I should make everything pretty self-explanatory. So let's get into it. Obviously, the first thing you're going to need to do is download the plugin. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Firefox, and I will explain why I use Firefox for downloading, even though I have the Chrome browser and stuff right there. But basically, we're going to go here to bucket.org. I already have the tab pulled up. And there we go. And then we're going to go to Get Plugins. We're going to wait. And we're just going to type bPermissions. If you've never been on this site and you're new to server hosting, this is pretty much a go-to place. Take another little short break here. This has thousands of user-created plugins and all kinds of stuff. Everything that you're ever really going to want for your server can be found off of this Get Plugins page. Yeah, there's not much else to say about that. So once you do that, just go ahead and hit search. And it will be the first one that pops up. You can tell Codename B and the bPermissions right here. So just click on that, and then it'll bring you to the project page. And basically, the project page, this will be different for every plugin, obviously. And it just, it gives you some helpful tutorials and tries to sell this plugin to you, basically. This right here is extremely handy. If for whatever reason this tutorial doesn't, help you out with what you need help with, you can go to this page right here, and these example configurations are, perfect. They just show you exactly the way it should look if mine doesn't make any sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the top and hit download, and this will automatically link you to the most current version. And you're just going to hit download again, click save file, and then the download box will pull up. And this box right here is the reason I use Firefox instead of Chrome or Internet Explorer. If you're using Internet Explorer and you're trying to do Minecraft hosting, then yeah, something's wrong. You should probably, I most definitely recommend that you immediately stop using Internet Explorer if you're trying to do anything like this. It's extremely slow. But anyways, Firefox, this is the reason, this box is the whole reason that I do it. Not like it pops up, you don't have to mess with any settings in Chrome or anything like that to get it done. So I'm just going to minimize this. Take, drag, drop this into the YouTube server folder that we made. We'll go ahead and open up this, and it should be right here. We're just going to go ahead and drag this into the plugins folder. And we can get rid of this. Alright, so you see bPermissions there in the plugins folder, but you notice that there's nothing that we can change. So what we're going to go ahead and do real quick is run the server. And we'll give that a second to do everything it's got to do. And it takes a second. Alright, and then you'll see right here, bPermissions, enabling bPermissions, and it's good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and type stop. Should always, if you're going to stop your server, make sure that you use the console command stop. Alright, and then we're going to go into plugins, and then bam, now we have that files folder, and that'll give us everything we need. Alright, so basically, these are your world folders, and there will be one for every world that's in your extra area, or your main thing. Alright, so in each one of these you're going to see groups and users, and basically those are just individual ones for each world. However, you'll see that there's a group and users right here, and these are the global files. You have to turn them on, but if you're not interested in mirroring and doing certain things for one world but not for another world, and you just want everybody to be the same everywhere, then just use these. It's a lot easier. It leaves you a lot less of area for error. So the next thing we're going to go over is the config file. It's very straightforward. Autosave, it's pretty self-explanatory. Track types, multi-tracks just means that you can have multiple tracks, and we'll get into what tracks are. I really wouldn't recommend changing this, just in case. Even if you don't use the multi-track, it's always nice to have the option in case later on, and you don't have to worry about ever coming back to this. Debug mode, unless you're a developer or something like that, I really wouldn't use this. Offline mode, again, it's not really going to be applicable. Track limit, again, I would just leave it false just in case you decide later on. And then I'll use global files. Since I am going to use those global files, I'm going to go ahead and turn this to true. And then click save. And we'll go ahead and close this out. Alright, so the next is custom nodes. Basically, this allows you to create custom permission nodes for plugins that you're running. It is kind of confusing, and it takes a little bit of practice to work it out. We're not going to go over that right now. But again, it's something that is an option, and it's kind of nice that it's even there. Mirrors, basically this is simple enough. It says that, say your main one is YouTube, and you go ahead and go into groups and set your permissions how you want them. And you want everything in YouTube Nether to be the exact same as YouTube. Basically what you do is go into mirrors and set it up. So YouTube Nether equals YouTube, and then everything that happens here as far as permissions is concerned will happen in both. And that's actually really handy if you're not using the global files, but since we are, we don't need to worry about it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over groups, and this is what we're actually going to do now. It's going to give you something blank. Don't flip out. We're going to fill it out real quick. It's really not complicated. So we'll just go ahead and get to that. Alright, so the first thing we're going to type is default. This is extremely important. Default basically is what somebody's going to be the second they join your server. What I do, I put it as new. You can put it as whatever you want. That doesn't matter. Just make sure that you write default out and that you have that there, just so that way the permissions plugin knows where people need to start. Alright, next you're going to do groups. Now this is going to be where you define each individual group that you have, and I'll put in a couple just to show you real quickly, and we'll go over how exactly the first one works. Make sure that when you're updating and editing a YML file that there are no tabs anywhere in what you're doing. Tabs basically make YML flip out and it's unreadable. I don't know why that is. It's just how it is, I guess. So make sure that you're always using the space bar. So groups. Now we just made the default group, so we need to actually define that group. So we'll go ahead and type new. So that's our first group. See how it automatically did that? So now we're going to type permissions. Now we're going to just define exactly what we want. I'd like to add that almost every plugin that you download is going to come with something called permission nodes, and permission nodes look like this. Basically, this now means that the new group can use the warp command in the Essentials plugin. That is a permissions node. Every plugin will have them, and they should have them listed somewhere. Or I should say almost every plugin. And that, depending on what the plugin is, that's how you can determine what groups get what and where and everything else. So we'll give it a couple more. Even though I'm not running Essentials, these are just the permissions plugins or permission nodes that I remember for some reason. And you can set as home, actually set home, and let's let him get to his house too. Okay, now the next thing we're going to set up is something called inheritance. See how it turns red there? That means that I left a tab in. Okay, groups. I don't want the default group to have inherited from anybody, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a bracket in there to close it off, and we'll leave it at that. I'll tell you what inheritance is once we get to a group that needs it. Then we're going to use metadata. Now metadata is your prefixes and suffixes. So the first thing you're going to put in here is priority. Okay, so with priority, basically it gives this group a number value. Now what that means is right now it's at the bottom, and every group that I want ranked above that, I need to make sure that it has a higher number value than this one. It doesn't have to be by tens. As far as I know, it can be by ones. You just need to make sure that the whole number value for each group up the rank chain is higher than the last one. And we'll go ahead and give these guys a prefix just so when they log on and type, everybody knows, hey, these guys are new. Make sure with the metadata that you always cap it in these quotation marks. That way, oops. Go ahead and bracket that. If these numbers and stuff don't make any sense to you, don't worry. This really isn't essential at all. This is just setting up prefix. Anyways, make sure that these right here always cap your metadata. So it should always start with one of these and end with one of these. Alright, so basically that's a permissions group. That's all there is to it. Now we're just going to go ahead and build a couple more, just so I can show you a couple different things. So we always need to have some members because we're a pretty regular server. And we'll give members some craft economy commands and some jobs commands. Why not, right? Members need to be productive members of society. And stuff like that. Okay, so basically, as you can tell, everything is dead the same as the other group, minus what you put inside here, and obviously the metadata is going to be a little bit different. Here's where things get a little bit different, in that since they're members, they've already been the default group new once, and we want them to have all of these permissions plus these permissions, but we don't want to have to type all these out again because that's just kind of stupid. So basically all we're going to do is hit this again, do this little minus sign, and then we're just going to type out new. I found out, I always thought that this had to be capitalized exactly like it is in the group. And the group doesn't have to be capitalized, I just like it looking that way. But it doesn't. In fact, bPermissions, when it runs, is going to automatically lowercase that first letter anyways, so there's no point to doing it. For the longest time, it used to drive me crazy, but I guess it's just how it likes it done. And then we'll do some metadata. And I'm just not even going to give them a prefix. Alright. So basically that's it. Make sure you always hit save when you're out of this. And there we go, not saved. But yeah, that's it. For some reason, I found out that if you have like a bunch of empty space here, bPermissions gets really finicky. I don't know what it is, so make sure that you clear out your bottom lines and that it really shouldn't matter. And if you have one or two, it's not going to make a difference. I just found out that if you had a lot, I'd accidentally made a mistake and had a lot. It just bugged my server really bad. So make sure that you clear out those bottom ones. And then, yep, so let me show you what a full one looks like. And this, after downloading a bunch of plugins and everything else, is what one will end up looking like. You can see we have the groups, and that's the default group is the first one, and then permissions, and we have all the permissions for new people. And you have groups that don't have any inheritance, they're metadata, and we have the members, and all their specific only members kind of, permissions or whatever. And then we'll have groups. Now, since we want them to have everything the new guys have, we're going to go ahead and give them new. And then we get to moderator, and they have a whole new set of stuff. And notice how these guys don't have member and new. It's because these members, it automatically adds the new in with that. So as long as you have one in between, you don't need to keep like new member admin all the way on down. So that's what a full one looks like, and we'll get on to the next file. Alright, the next major file is tracks. This is extremely important. This is actually how you rank your people in game. Alright, so this is the default track. How it looks, you can name this however you want. And we'll just go ahead and name this ranks. Oops. And then what you're going to do is just type in the name of your groups that you made. So we have a new, and we have member. Now if you want, so you have a bunch of different like groups and stuff, you can make other tracks just so you can jump ranks. So let's say we'll make one that says admin, and you'll go from new to admin or something like that. And that's why I always leave the multi on, just so I can have more than one if I really wanted to. You don't have to use it, and you can leave the multi on, it doesn't matter. But basically this right here is how you promote somebody. So in game you'll type in /promote, and you have to be the owner, or you have to have this permission, and then you'll put in their username, and then you'll type out the track. So now if I'm a new guy, when I hit enter, this will promote me from new to member. And then to demote somebody, it's the exact same thing. Demote, and then ranks again, and that'll just bring me down the next rung, whatever it happens to be. So that's pretty much it for bPermissions. There's one last file, it's called users. Basically what this is going to do, it's going to generate a permissions log for each user, and it'll do this automatically, and you can just go in here and then give people specific permissions. Like you want this one person not to be an admin, but you do want to give them the ability to mute, and you don't want to make a whole new group just for that one person, then you can just give them the mute command or mute permission inside users. So that's pretty handy. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's bPermissions in a nutshell.